Okay, good afternoon again, and let's start our discussion for today regarding the cost volume profit analysis. Ano nga ba yung cost volume profit analysis? So, we have our cost volume profit analysis. It is a profit planning tool that deals with the relationship of the profit with the cost and sales volume. O from the term itself, cost or relationship daw ng cost, ng sales volume, and ng profit. It is also a systematic examination of the relationships among the cost driver, and profit. It is used to measure the functional relationship between the major factors affecting profits and to determine the profit structure of an entity. So ginagamit natin itong CVP analysis para makita yung relationship ng major factors. Yan, ano ba yung major factors na nakaka-apekto sa profit natin? Di ba, we have our cost. Sa ating cost, we have our variable cost and yung fixed cost natin. Dito sa ating cost volume profit analysis, we will mainly focus on the types of cost based sa behavior. Yun yung na-discuss natin. Based sa behavior, we have our fixed cost and our variable cost. And also, ano pa ba nakaka-apekto sa profit natin, di ba? Yung sales. Ano doon sa sales ang makaka-apekto? Not only the volume or kung gaano kadami na ibenta mo, pati na rin kung magkano mo binebenta or magkano yung price ng product or service na binebenta mo. So for our cost volume profit analysis, we will use these elements. We have our sales, total fixed cost, variable cost, and our sales mix. So ang ating sales mix, ito lang yung mix ng products sa isang business entity na all things constant is pare-parehas or kung ilan yung binebenta niya, yun siya, parehas lang siya constant. So we have our applications ng CVP analysis and natin ito ginagamit. We use this for planning and decision making, which may involve choosing the type of product to produce and sell. Ayan. So sa type of product to produce and sell, we use this CVP analysis kung ano yung mas profitable, ano yung mas nag-i-incur ng mas malaking cost so that the business entity or the management of the business entity could assess kung dapat ba nila itong patuloy na i-produce at ibenta, yun. Also, the pricing policy to follow. Since makita natin yung relationship ng cost and ng volume kung ilan yung target natin na ibebenta based dun sa production natin. So, makikita rin natin kung magkano yung gusto nating kitain. Titingnan natin kung magkano yung profit natin gusto so that we could adjust yung price natin doon sa specific product. And then marketing strategy to use. So nalaman mo yung cost, nalaman mo kung gaano kadami ibebenta mo, yung i-distribute mo over the market. Ayan. And then you now have your price, na-set mo na yung price kung magkano may ibebenta yung product na yon na magkakaroon ka pa rin ng profit. So now, you will have to strategize paano tong product mo na to ay magiging star player sa market. So, kailangan ba ikaw ay nasa, two types ng strategy natin? We have our cost guys help me, product differentiation and cost. Nawala sa vocabulary ko. I'm sorry. Pero yon, you know that. So, the marketing strategy that we will use, do we have to nababaan pa yung price natin para lang makapag-compete tayo sa competitors natin na mas murang magbigay ng product, the same product na binebenta natin. Ayan. And then last is the type of productive facilities to acquire. So, yung type ng productive facilities to acquire, this mainly focuses on madalas to naka-related sa ating mga fixed costs. And in our cost volume profit analysis, we have our assumptions and limitations that we will use. So these assumptions and limitations, dito tayo magbe-base sa ating analysis. So lahat ng i-analyze natin ng mga data, ng mga information must be aligned with these limitations. So first limitation ng CVP analysis is that both sales and cost behave linearly and are predictable within a specific period and relevant range. So, within the relevant range tayo, so, we all know na si fixed cost natin, di ba si fixed cost natin per level, siya ay fixed basta within the relevant range or basta hindi nangangailangan ng, halimbawa, for example, for our production ng canned goods, di ba? So, we have one machinery to which our fixed cost is based. So, doon nang gagaling yung fixed cost natin sa paggamit natin ng facility, no? Sa paggamit natin ng facility nung machinery. So, kaso yung machinery natin na yun, yung nag-iisa nating machinery, ang total canned goods lang daw na kaya niyang i-produce is 1,000 cans per day. So, yun yung relevant range. Dapat hindi tayo lalagpas sa 1,000 na 1,000 units ng canned goods na maipoproduce because kapag lumagpas tayo sa 1,000, we will need additional machinery to produce that additional units na gusto natin i-target, and then yung relevant range ng fixed cost natin ay madadagdagan. Diba? So, dito sa ating CVP analysis, so yung relevant range natin ay iisa, and then yung sales and cost natin is nakabehave siya linearly. Ibig sabihin, habang tumataas yung sales, tumataas din yung cost natin. Linearly nga, di ba? Pataas siya. And next, assumption is fixed cost, unit variable cost, selling price, and sales mix must behave as constant. So, constant siya, hindi siya nagbabago. Yung fixed cost natin, unit variable cost, selling price, and our sales mix. Next is we have, there is no changes in inventory levels or kung ilan yung ipoproduce natin, ito rin yung ibebenta natin. So, di ba, we all know na hindi naman lahat ng pinoproduce ay naibebenta. Yung masasabi lang natin or ma-recognize lang natin, di ba, na cost of goods sold yung inventory natin kapag naibenta na siya. Di ba? Mai-expense lang natin yung inventory mula papunta dun sa cost of goods sold kapag yung kaakibat na produkto na may cost na yon ay naibenta na or napunta na sa sales natin. Pero dito sa assumption natin, ang assumption is kung ilan yung ipoproduce natin, yun din yung ibebenta natin. Next is volume is the only factor affecting sales, variable cost, and profit. So dito, si volume lang daw makaka-apekto. Other external factors or other external na pangyayari ay hindi siya makaka-apekto sa ating sales. Lastly, time value of money is ignored. So hindi natin i-consider si time value of money. Guys, definition lang muna tayo sa mga susunod. Then you will understand more of this kapag nasa problem tayo or nasa application tayo sa dulong part nito. So, now we will move sa ating contribution margin. Ano nga ba yung contribution margin natin? So, our contribution margin, it is a measure of the company's ability to cover variable cost with revenues. It is also known as marginal income, profit contribution, contribution to fixed cost, or incremental contribution. So, si contribution daw, margin daw natin, siya yung margin na nagko-contribute or siya yung nagko-contribute sa margin natin para ma-cover yung variable cost. So, from our sales, we will have to take out our variable cost to be able to get the contribution margin. So, si total contribution margin, siya ngayon yung magko-cover sa ating fixed cost. So, para mas maintindihan nyo to, I will show you a contribution margin income statement. Di ba ang ginagamit natin sa sorry, binasa ko lang yung chat. Cost leadership. Meron nagsumagot kanina, cost leadership. Yes, tama, cost leadership yon. Hindi lumalabas sa akin yung chats nyo kanina. Going back sa dinidiscuss ko kanina, we all know na ang income statement ng isang business entity, it starts with our sales. Tama, di ba? our sales, and then we will less yung cost of sales to be able to get yung gross profit natin. So from our gross profit, we will deduct from there sa gross profit natin yung selling and administrative expense, and then after we have deducted our selling and administrative expense, we will get our net income before tax. Pero dito sa ating cost volume profit analysis, meron tayong i-introduce na panibagong income statement kung saan itong income statement na to ay isang type ng management report. So, sa management report lang natin gagamitin itong income statement. Di ba tandaan nyo yung graph natin? We have our financial accounting and our management accounting. Sa financial accounting, yun yung income statement natin. Yung kanina ko binanggit. Dito, sa management accounting natin, we have our contribution margin income statement, in which itong contribution margin income statement natin, isa-separate natin or ipe-present natin yung cost natin based sa kanilang behavior, which is yung variable cost and our fixed cost. So you will see dito, sales, we have sales less yung ating variable cost, and then kapag na-less na natin yung variable cost, we will be able to get our contribution margin. So si contribution margin, siya ngayon yung gagamitin natin pang cover ng fixed cost. So to cover our fixed cost, and after we have covered our fixed cost, from our contribution margin, we will now have our profit before tax or yung ating operating income. So from this contribution margin statement, we will be able to have these formulas. So sa ating formulas, we have contribution margin equals sales minus variable cost. And next, we have our unit contribution margin. This is unit selling price minus unit variable cost, or pwede rin siyang sales minus variable cost divided by total unit produced or sold. And then last, we have our contribution margin ratio, which is also called as marginal ratio or profit volume ratio. This is contribution margin divided by sales. Pwede rin si unit contribution margin divided by our unit selling price, or pwede rin siya change in our contribution margin divided by change sa ating sales. So guys, tandaan nyo lang muna, maging familiarize lang muna kayo sa mga formulas natin and this contribution margin income statement, kasi gagamitin natin to lahat mamaya sa illustration para mas lalo nyo maintindihan at mas lalo nyo ma-appreciate kung para saan ba itong mga ito. So ito yon kanina. So we have our sa rate natin, ito yung per unit kanina, we have our selling price, diba? Total sales divided by our unit, total unit produced or sold, and then we have our total variable cost divided by our total unit produced or sold, and then we have our contribution margin per unit, which is total contribution margin divided by unit produced or sold. And then balikan natin yung kanina, di ba sabi dito kanina, si fixed cost, si unit variable cost, si selling price, and si sales mix, although wala pa dito si sales mix, they are constant or they are fixed. Constant sila, in which si selling price natin, constant yan. Any units produced mo, itong selling price per unit na yan, iisa lang. Pati si variable cost per unit natin, constant yan. So kung constant si selling price at saka si variable cost per unit, and then to be able to get our contribution margin per unit, kailangan lang natin deduct yung constant na selling price at yung constant na variable cost per unit. Kaya ang mangyayari, si ating contribution margin per unit ay constant din. At pagdating naman natin dito kay fixed costs, si fixed cost ay constant kapag total, yung ating total fixed cost will be constant, pero yung ating unit fixed cost or fixed cost per unit will be, hindi na siya constant. Tama? That will be variable na. Nakasunod pa? Nakasunod pa? I need a confirmation. Confirm naman kung nandyan pa kayo.
Yes po, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So now we are done with our contribution margin, pero hindi natin ito disregard because for our next na topic or sa ating next na introduce ko na term sa inyo, gagamitin pa rin natin itong contribution margin natin. Now we have our break-even point. Ano nga ba si break-even point? Si break-even point, siya si level ng sales in units or in pesos where the total revenue equals total cost. That is, there is no neither profit nor loss. Or ibig sabihin lang nito, yung total sales natin, yung total na nabenta natin or na revenue sales natin ay equals lang sa total cost. Meaning dito, kung equal yung total sales sa total cost natin, meron ba tayong profit or loss? Meron ba tayong profit or loss? Wala, yes. So, sa break-even point natin, ito yung level ng sales either in units or in pesos to which our profit is 0. So, 0 si profit natin. Ito, this is a graphical representation of our break-even point to which we all know na yung fixed cost natin, siya yung ating y-intercept. So, the fixed cost and we have our variable cost. Yung variable cost per unit natin, that is our slope sa ating equation. Excuse me. Sa ating equation, and the variable cost actually varies depending on the total variable cost varies depending on the total units sold or produced. And then, si break-even point natin, ito yung point kung saan mag-meet yung total cost natin and our total sales, and that would be yung ating break-even point lower than yung total sales or total unit sales. Below that break-even point is our loss, and then yung above dun sa break-even point, we have our profit area. So we have this formulas para sa pagkuha ng ating break-even point. You just have to take note of this. Yung ating break-even point per units, fixed cost divided by unit contribution margin. Guys, you have the copy of this modules nyo, di ba? Meron kayong copy na ito sa modules, tama?
Yes po.
Gamitin nyo we will use this mamaya. Now we have our margin of safety. Si margin of safety naman, siya yung maximum amount by which sales could decrease without incurring a loss. So, from our graph, di ba, we all know na meron tayong break-even point. Break-even point. So, mula doon kay break-even point, siya daw yung total sales or total unit sales kung saan 0 yung profit natin. So, si margin of safety, sabi niya, ito daw yung maximum amount by which sales could decrease without incurring a loss. So, si margin of safety natin is any point dito sa ating total sales or total unit sales to which yun yung maximum na mababawas niya or hanggang dun siya sa break-even point para hindi tayo magkakalos. Ibig sabihin lang nun, kung sakaling ito, ganito kadami yung ipoproduce at ibebenta natin, yun yung maximum na dapat nating ibaba para lang hindi tayo magkakaroon ng loss. So, if our break-even point is 10,000 units sold and produced, dapat margin of safety natin, kung meron tayong 15,000 na regularly pinoproduce sa isang araw, ang margin of safety natin will be yung 15,000 minus 10,000 na break-even point, yung 5,000, yun yung margin of safety. Para hindi tayo mag-incur ng loss. Kasi any units below our break-even point, ayan, any unit below our break-even point will indicate loss na agad sa atin. So next, we have our indifference point. Si indifference point, siya lang yung level ng volume at which total costs or profits are the same between two alternatives. So we have our first alternative and our second alternative. And dito daw, so yung level ng volume kung saan parehas lang sila, mag-equal lang sila, si alternative A at si alternative B, ng magiging sales, magiging total cost, and magiging profit. And then lastly, yung ating sales mix, ito yung proportion, ito yung nabanggit ko na kanina, proportion of different products that comprise the company's total sales. And then lastly, we have our degree of operating leverage. So the degree of operating leverage, it measures how sensitive the pre-tax profit is to sales volume increases and decreases. It is also known as the operating leverage factor. Yan, sige. Para mas maintindihan natin mabuti itong cost volume profit analysis, let us now move sa ating illustration. Haba, no? Wait lang. Stop share muna ko. And then, I have to open another one. Let's share again. So, share screen and screen ko na share. Nakita nyo na ba yung buo? Zoom lang natin. Nakikita ba itong controls ko sa Zoom? Hindi naman. Nakikita nyo ba yung controls ko sa Zoom?
Yung mouse po.
Hindi, nakaharang itong controls ko sa Zoom. Nasa gitna ngayon. Hindi naman. Hindi siguro.
Hindi po.
Sige. Multiple view ko para makita natin yung formula and then mas madali tayong magkaroon ng tawag dito illustration. Ayan. So, sige nga. Andrew. Andrew. Andrew, pabasa nga ako nung natin, problem.
Ma'am, yung number 1 po.
Yes.
ABC company sells a single product. The sales and expenses for a recent month follows. Sales. Ma'am, okay na po. Kasama po ba yung required?
Kasama.
Number 1, determine the following. Letter A, unit selling price. B, unit variable cost. C, Ma'am, ano pala? C, CM ratio, CMR. Number 2, for profit planning purposes, compute the following. Letter A, break-even point in units. B, break-even peso sales. Number 3, what is the margin of safety and its percent sales of 300,000 pesos? Number 4, what unit sales are required to earn 75,000 pesos profit for the month? Number 5, what peso sales are required to earn an after tax profit of 60,000 pesos, tax rate 20%. Number 6, what peso sales are required to reach a return of sales or profit margin ratio of 20%. Number 7, assuming ABC is currently selling 8,000 units per month, ABC believes that sales would increase if advertising were increased by 75%. How many units should sales increase to maintain the sales loss that it is currently incurring? Note, although current sales of 8,000 units are given, you need to use this info to solve the problem. And lastly, number 8, assuming ABC currently pays its salespeople a monthly salary of 10,000 pesos without any commission, ABC considers a plan whereby salespeople receive a 10% commission, but their monthly salary would fall to 7,000. What sales level will ABC be indifferent between two compensation plans?
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Yes, okay. Thank you. So, using or presenting our given using our contribution margin income statement, let us now solve for this required na sa ating problem. First, we have to determine daw ano ba unit selling price, unit variable cost, and our cost margin, contribution margin ratio. And based sa given natin, we have our sales, 300,000 variable cost, 120,000 contribution margin. Ang contribution margin natin is 300,000 less yung ating variable cost na 120,000. So that is 180,000. And then we have our fixed cost na 150,000. I-minus lang natin yon mula sa ating contribution margin. We have now our profit of 30,000. So dito daw sa sales and expenses na to, so sa total cost, sales and cost na to, we produced and sold 12,000 units. So, para makuha natin yung unit selling price and yung unit variable cost, we just have to use yung ating formula. Ang formula natin kanina, ito, selling price per unit is equal to sales natin, sales divided by yung total units na ibinenta. Tama? So, ang ating unit selling price would be 25 pesos. And then, ating unit variable cost will be yung total variable cost less yung ilan? Less ba or divide? Guys, tulungan niyo ako para malaman ko lang na nandyan pa rin kayo. Divided by 12,000 na units, ilan ito?
10 po.
10. So, ayan, 10. And then, ang ating contribution margin per unit would be yung total contribution margin over or divided by our total sales produced. So, dito, makikita natin, di ba yung in-explain ko sa inyo kanina, na si contribution margin natin, siya yung contribution, siya yung nagko-contribute dun sa margin. So, dahil constant yung ating selling price, yung ating variable cost per unit, we all know na si contribution margin natin would be constant also, or magiging fixed lang to. Constant siya, to which pwede natin gamitin yung total contribution margin divided by yung total units, or makukuha din natin siya ng 25 minus 10, or selling price minus yung variable cost per unit, makuha pa rin natin yung ating contribution margin per unit. Lastly, we have our fixed cost per unit. Ang fixed cost per unit natin, total fixed cost divided by our total units sold, and 13 pesos. Yung profit natin would be, for sure, 2 pesos ito. Diba? Pwede mong kuhanin na unit contribution margin less yung unit fixed cost, or pwede rin yung total profit natin divided by our total units. Bakit 3 pesos? Tama ba to?
12.4 po yun.
Nag-round off. I'm sorry. Ayan. So, nag-round off, 2.5 yung ating profit per unit. Ang ating fixed cost per unit would be 12.50. Okay. Now, meron na tayong sagot sa unit selling price, which is 25 pesos, and our unit variable cost, which is 10 pesos. Now, let's go sa ating contribution margin ratio. Based sa ating contribution margin income statement, we get the ratio of each component or of each element by using the sales. So, si sales natin, siya yung 100%. Bakit? Kasi, di ba, ito nga yung total natin na marireceive mula dun sa customers natin. So, si sales natin would be our 100%. Ngayon, how much will our variable cost be, or variable cost ratio? So, sa variable cost ratio natin, kailangan lang natin makuha yung total variable cost divided by our total sales. Bakit? This will be, ilan ito guys sa calculator nyo? Ayaw gumana sa Excel ko. Divide nyo nga 120,000 divided by 30,000, 300,000.
40% po, ma'am.
40%. Ayaw gumana nung formula ng Excel ko eh. So, 40% ito. Ngayon, ilan yung ating contribution margin? So, to get our contribution margin, we have to divide total contribution margin sa ating total sales. This will be ilan?
Hindi po. 60%.
60. So, 60% yan. Pwede rin natin yan makuha mula dito sa total sales ratio minus yung total variable cost ratio. Kaya nakuha natin yung 60%. Now, yung ating fixed cost ratio. So, sa fixed cost ratio, total fixed cost divided by our total sales. Ilan ito?
50 po.
50% po.
50%. So, 50%. And then, yung ating profit ratio will be 30,000
10%
divided by ating 300,000. Ilan to?
10%.
10%. So, 10% ito. So, ayan. And this will be our contribution margin statement based sa ratio. Kaya may sagot na tayo sa letter C, number 1, letter C, contribution margin ratio is 60%. Now, we move sa ating second required for profit planning purposes, compute the following. Ang ating break-even point daw in units and our break-even peso in sales. So before we move sa ating break-even point in unit and our break-even point in sales, so isa-isayin lang ulit natin yung sa break-even natin. Ay, wait, may nakalimutan akong sabihin. So, we all know na yung contribution margin natin, ano na ulit yung textbook definition ng contribution margin natin? Ang textbook definition natin ng contribution margin, it is measure of company's ability to cover variable costs with revenues. So, siya rin yung gagamitin natin, i-code ng marginal income, profit contribution, contribution to fixed costs, and incremental contribution. Pero, also, galing dun sa term na contribution margin. So, gamitin natin kung ano nga ba ibig sabihin mismo ng contribution margin. So, si contribution margin daw, siya daw yung magko-contribute sa ating margin. Lalo na yung ating contribution margin per unit. So, ang ating contribution margin per unit is, di ba ito, 15 pesos. I-illustrate natin para mas maintindihan nyo kung ano yung sinasabi ko, siya yung magko-contribute sa margin or dun sa sales or, ayun, sige, sa margin. Let's illustrate, di ba? Using our problem, 12,000 daw yung units na na-produce. Ngayon, how much will be our sales kung sakaling 12,001 or 12,001 yung ating total sales produced, sold and produced. So kung 12,001 yan, this will be, ang ating total sales will be ilan? 12,001 multiplied by 25 pesos selling price. Tama? So that will be 300,025 pesos. And then our variable cost, so 12,001 times variable cost per unit, that is 10 pesos. And then we have our contribution margin. Contribution margin natin, sales minus yung ating variable cost, 180,015 pesos. And then we have our fixed cost. So yung constant natin, 150,000. Niles natin si 150,000 dito. And now we have our profit. So ilan yung profit natin? Ilan yung profit natin? Yes, ito?
30,015 pesos.
30,015 pesos. 180.15 minus 150,000. So, 30,015 pesos. Dun sa idinagdag natin na isang unit, we all know na nadagdagan yung total profit natin ng ilan? Ng 15 pesos. So, si 15 pesos natin, ano yung 15 pesos natin? Yun yung ating contribution margin. So, si contribution margin per unit natin, siya yung constant na magbibigay or magko-contribute sa ating margin. Every time magdadagdag tayo ng ating sales. Isa pa. So, kung 12,002 naman ngayon ang ating ipoproduce, this will be 12,000 times 25.
350. 300,050 po.
And then, sa variable cost natin, 12,000 times.
120,020.
And then, contribution margin natin would be 180.30. Tapos, ating fixed cost, dahil fixed yan, same lang yan. So, ang ating
Ayan
total
lang.
profit would be 30,030. So, nung nagdagdag tayo ng isa, ilan ang nagdagdag sa atin?
30 pesos.
Isa din po.
Nung nagdagdag tayo ng isa, ilan ang contribute margin natin? 15 pesos, di ba? Kaya yung contribution natin, contribution margin per unit, siya yung magko-contribute
Hindi
sa
po
margin.
magdagdag.
So every time magdadagdag tayo, siya yung constant na magdadagdag. Yung 15 pesos. Ayan. So now we move sa ating second, yung ating break-even point. So sa ating break-even point, we all know na yung break-even point natin, siya daw yung magiging constant. So, dito ko ipapakita. Ayan. We have our y-axis. Ay, sorry, mali pala yung nabanggit ko kanina. Si break-even point natin, siya yung point to which wala tayong loss, wala rin tayong profit, kundi tayo ay break-even. O, nabawi lang natin. Ang profit natin is 0. So, we have, to illustrate this in the graph, we have our y-axis and our x-axis. Di ba? Ito yung y-axis natin. And then, ito yung x-axis natin. And we all know na yung fixed cost natin, dahil fixed cost yan, at siya ay yung y-intercept natin, fixed lang yan at this level. And if it is fixed at this level, so now, we have our variable cost. Our ating variable cost, siya yung linearly pataas. Diba yung variable cost total? This will be our independent variable. Tama? And this is ang ating dependent variable. So, sa independent variable natin, or dito sa ating x-axis, ito yung total units sold and produced. Produced and sold. And then, sa ating dependent variable, ito yung ating total sales. Tama? Tama, di ba? Nasusundan pa? Nasusundan pa ako? Andyan pa kayo? Andyan pa?
Opo.
Okay, sige. Thank you. Now, we have our total cost. So, si total cost natin, sa ang graph niya or yung linear representation niya will be, ano tawag dito? I'm sorry, linear siya, pero doon siya sa taas ng fixed cost. Kasi di ba, kahit na zero units yung maibenta natin, pero di ba, kahit na 0 units yung maibenta natin, meron pa rin tayong fixed cost na present. So, sa ating fixed cost will be present always. Kaya sa ating total cost, linear siyang pataas pa rin, pero magmumula tayo kay fixed cost. And then, our sales would be from the zero. Kasi, di ba, kung wala ka namang ibebenta or ipoproduce at ibebenta, wala ka namang sales. So, dependent yung ating sales and linear din siyang pataas based sa dami ng ating ibebenta. So, you have this, did you guys reviewed or studied yung ating regression analysis and our scatter graph diagram? So, balik tayo dito sa ating sa ating linear equation kung saan we have our y equals a plus bx, kung saan si y natin, yun yung ating dependent variable, si dependent variable natin, and then we have our a, si ating a ay yung ating y-intercept, or dito sa ating illustration, the y-intercept is our fixed cost. And then we have our plus bx. Yung ating b would be our slope. Ang nagre-represent ng slope natin ay yung variable cost per unit. And then si x would be our cost driver. So si cost driver natin dito ay yung ating units sold and produced and sold. So dahil siya ay linear equation, ito yung equation ng ating total cost. And then we also have our sales. So we have our sales which is also linear, a linear graph. So kung linear graph yung ating sales, it also has a linear equation to which we have our linear equation na y dependent variable is equal to bx or ax or kahit anong variable gusto nyo. Dito nagre-represent ng ating variable na a or b or kung ano man gusto nyong variable would be our selling price. Ito yung magiging slope niya, the selling price, kasi ito ay isang sales graph. And then, yung ating x will still remain to be our cost driver or yung ating units. Then we have our break-even point. So, si break-even point kung saan nag-meet si total cost at si total sales. Dahil nga kapag sa break-even point, wala tayong loss or profit. And dahil isa siyang point, di ba sa algebra natin, kapag yung point sa graph ay palaging merong coordinates. So dahil isa siyang point, it has a coordinates na x and y. So si x, si independent variable, and si y, si dependent variable. Or in this illustration, si ating x will be our cost driver, the unit, and then our y would be yung ating sales. So sa baba ni break-even point, yun yung ating loss. Sa taas ni break-even point, yung ating profit. So now, let's use yung illustration natin kanina. Ano ulit yung problem natin kanina? Ito yung sa problem natin kanina, which we have sales na 300,000, 120,000, 180 na contribution margin, fixed cost na 150, and then we have a profit of 30,000. So, ang ating fixed cost will be 150,000. So, sa 150,000, and then we have our variable cost. So, ang ating variable cost per unit, the sales will be, or the slope will be 10 pesos. So, pag, na-typo pala ako dito, guys. Fixed cost pala natin 150 dito, hindi 170. 150,000 plus slope na 10, galing sa ating variable cost per unit, 10. Yung ating X, yung ating cost driver na unit. So, ito yung ating total cost equation. Papalit na lang ako 150,000 to. 150 ito eh. And then, sa ating sales naman, sales graph, ang ating equation would be y equals selling price 25 times yung ating cost driver na unit. So, 25x. Ayan. So, using our formula of our break-even point, now let us compute for the break-even point in units and our break-even peso sales. So, alam natin na sa ating break-even point, wait lang. Merong nakapasok na aso, pinalabas. Aso ng kapitbahay. Kaya humihiyaw ang aking kasama sa bahay. Anyway, going back, so we all know na sa ating break-even point, ang ating profit will be equal to 0. And based sa ating contribution margin income statement, we have our formula na sales minus variable cost minus fixed cost will be our profit. Tama, di ba? At sa break-even point natin, yung ating sales minus variable cost minus fixed cost, it will be 0. Tama? Kasi break-even point daw eh. So, yung profit daw natin dapat equal to 0. So, makikita rin natin dito. So, kapag sa algebra nyo, di ba? Sa algebra natin, alam nyo na yan, ililipat, di ba? Para magkaroon ng variable dito sa kabilang side. So, dito,
Transpose
sales
po.
minus, transpose pala. Ayun, transpose yung tamang term. Sorry na, sabi ko nga sa inyo, di ba, nung face-to-face, hindi ako math major at hindi rin ako magaling masyado sa algebra. Kaya yan. Tayo yung mga accountants. So, yan. Using that, transpose natin, sales minus variable cost will be our fixed cost. Tama? So, tama rin. Tama, di ba? Using this. So,
Opo.
kung ito, sales minus variable cost will be our fixed cost. And we all know na yung sales minus variable cost is our contribution margin. So, contribution margin is equal to will be
180.
equal sa ating fixed cost. Tama? So, kung equal si contribution margin at si fixed cost, ang profit natin will be 0. So, ayan, ini-illustrate ko lang. So, using, ngayon, punta na tayo sa break-even point natin. So, using our formula na break-even point in units, paano ko ba itong makakapit? Para mas madali. Sorry, lumiit. So, break-even point natin in units, our break-even point in units, this will be equal to fixed cost divided by yung ating contribution margin per unit. Contribution margin per unit. So, nagiging formula siya. Hindi dapat pala dito. Hindi dapat pala ako dito. Wag tanggalan ko ng equals. Dito na lang. Yan. Break-even point in units will be equal sa fixed cost minus contribution margin per unit. And we all know, gamit tong formula na to, na yung fixed cost daw natin is equal to contribution margin. So, substitute lang natin. Kung kanina transpose yung term, ngayon, substitute natin si fixed cost ng contribution margin over contribution margin per unit. Per unit. So, using yung algebra nyo, di ba? Kung ano yung nasa taas, ano yung tawag doon sa taas? Subdivision?
Denominator. Numerator po ba? Denominator.
Numerator. Kung parehas yung numerator tsaka si denominator,
Exponent.
we all know na siya ay makakancel. Tama? Di ba? So, ika-cancel natin. Kung ika-cancel
Common
natin
LCD.
contribution margin mula sa numerator, ika-cancel din natin si contribution margin mula sa denominator. Kaya, ang ating magiging sagot will be yung ating total units na needed for the break-even point. So, the same logic, ganito rin yung logic dun sa ating break-even point in ratio, pati na rin sa peso sales. Dahil nga, ito ay constant, so we all know na pag sales na yan or ratio na yan, parehas lang din sila. Ay, pinakita ko lang yung sa algebra, kung saan nanggaling yung mga formula natin. Diba? Para naiintindihan nyo. Ngayon, compute na natin. Sige. Using our formula, ang galing ko na to Lagay na lang natin dyan. Compute na daw natin ngayon si break-even point in units. So, to compute the break-even point in units, gagamitin daw natin si fixed cost over contribution margin per unit. So, si fixed cost natin ay 150,000. So, 150,000, divide daw natin siya sa contribution margin per unit. Ilan yung contribution margin per unit natin? Yung ating 15 pesos. So, 15 pesos. So, ang ating break-even point in units will be 10,000 units. Tama? Dito ko na lang, itinabi ko na lang kasi kapag binago ko yan, dahil Excel to, alam niyo naman gumamit ng Excel, di ba? So, mag-error na naman yan. So, ang ating break-even point in units will be 10,000. Ayan, break-even point in units, 10,000. And then, next na kailangan daw natin is the break-even peso sales. So, using our formula ulit, break-even point ng peso sales naman na tayo ngayon. Ano yung formula natin? Break-even point in peso sales, fixed cost divided by our CM ratio. So, fixed cost divided by our CM ratio, that would be equals, fixed cost natin, 150,000 ulit, divided by CM ratio. Ilan CM ratio natin? 60%?
60%.
Tama. Magiging sagot natin is 250,000 pesos yung break-even in our peso sales. Ngayon, illustrate natin kung talaga nga ba mag-hold through yung ating computation. So, in 10,000 units daw, sa 10,000 units, ilan yung ating magiging sales? So, 10,000 units multiplied by our selling price, it will be 250,000. And then, the variable cost, 10,000 units multiplied by our variable cost per unit na 10 pesos, that would be 100,000. Tama? And then, our contribution margin would be total sales minus total variable cost. It is 150,000, and then our fixed cost is 150,000. So, yung profit natin would be, ilan? Ay?
100,000.
Anong 100,000? Break-even point na tayo, di ba? Yung profit natin would be zero. Zero. Nalito ka siguro dito. Lagyan natin, ayan. Lagyan din natin decimal point para hindi nakakalito yung illustration. Tama ba yung computation natin? Ang break-even point daw in units is 10,000 units. So, kung 10,000 units yung ipoproduce at ibebenta natin, we will have total sales na 250 pesos. 250 pesos, ayan. Same din yung computation natin. Tingnan nga natin kung ganun din yung magiging ating break-even point ratio. So, ating break-even point ratio, break-even point divided by sales. Break-even point sa ating ratio equals yung ating break-even point. Break-even point is 250,000 divided by yung ating sales na 250,000. That would be 1 or 100%. Tama, di ba? 100%.
Oh, no.
Yes. So, now, yan. Alam nyo na ngayon yung break-even. Naintindihan ba ng lahat? Pa-confirm nga muna ako bago ako mag-move sa next.
Yes po.
Naintindihan ba ng lahat? Naintindihan? Okay, sige. Meron siguro sa inyong nasa tindahan kanina. So now let's move na sa ating next requirement. So ating next requirement is, what is the margin of safety at its present sales of 300,000? Ilan daw yung margin of safety natin? So we all know na yung margin of safety, ito yung maximum na kailangan nating maibenta or makapag-decrease para mapunta tayo sa break-even point or hindi tayo magkaroon ng loss. So, ilan daw yung magiging margin of safety kung ang sales natin is 300,000? So, kung 300,000 yung ating sales, ilan yung variable cost natin? Let's use this ratio. Kasi, itatago ko muna to kasi may kita nyo agad eh. So, di ba? Kung 300,000 daw yung present sales natin, ilan yung variable cost natin? Ito na lang ratio gamitin natin. We all know na yung variable cost ratio ay nanggaling din sa 100% ng sales. So kung ang variable cost ratio is 40%, this will be 300,000 divided by, baliktad ako, X or yung ating variable cost, 300,000 times 40% pala. Tama lang.
120.
Tama, di ba? Tama.
Opo.
Kasi 40% daw siya ng ating sales. And then yung ating magiging contribution margin will be 60%. So 300,000 times 60%,
180.
180,000. And yung ating fixed cost ay 50% daw na 300,000. Ang ating total sales,
150.
mute. Teka, na-unmute siya. Mute muna natin. So, 300,000 or ating total sales multiplied by our fixed cost ratio, that will be 150,000. Ngayon, ang ating profit will be, ito na lang, 180 minus 150,000, 30,000. So, ilan daw yung margin of safety natin kung yung present sales natin ay 300,000? Kung 300,000 yan at ang selling price natin ay 25 pesos, so 300,000 divided by selling price natin na 25, we are producing 12,000 units dito sa present sales na to, di ba? Ang present sales. So, ilan ang margin of safety? Ang margin of safety natin, this is sales minus break-even sales. So, 300,000 ang margin of safety. Ano ba? Margin of safety is sales natin minus break-even sales, which is 250,000. So, ang margin of safety in pesos is 50,000. Or yung margin of safety natin in units will be 12,000 minus 10,000. So, 2,000 daw na 2,000 na units yung maximum na hindi mo dapat mabenta para hindi ka magkaroon ng loss dito sa present sales mo na 12,000 units. So, yun lang yon. The same scenario siya. So, sa market margin of safety ratio, we just have to use yung ating margin of safety divided by our sales. So, yun yung ating margin of safety in ratio. Actually, the same siya eh. Kasi nga, di ba, doon sa problem natin, sabi nga present sales natin. Present sales nga daw natin, 12,000 or 300,000. Now we move sa ating next requirement. So, what unit sales? Magkano daw yung unit sales are required to earn 75,000 profit for the next month? So, sabi niya, magkano naman daw yung kailangan natin maibenta na units para lang magkaroon tayo ng 75 pesos profit. Teka lang, saan ko na nailagay yung formula nito? Ito pala. Ito yung formula. I-hide ko na ito muna margin of safety natin.
750 po.
750 yung
Sales
kailangan
po.
yung sales. Sige, wait. I-hide ko lang ito. 750,000 yung sales para makuha natin itong 75 pesos na profit. Okay, tingnan nga natin. So, using our formula, we all know na para makuha yung formula natin, yung gamitin ulit natin kanina, sales minus variable cost minus fixed cost is equal to our profit. Tama, di ba? Profit. Ay, sige na nga. I-leave ko na to. Nagets nyo naman to, di ba? Kung saan nanggaling tong formula natin na to. So, using that, na makukuha din natin yung profit sa dulo. Yung katulad lang din kanina, yung algebra. Ba't ba kasi trying hard akong i-explain sa inyo algebra? Hindi nga ako math major. Diba? O kaya, i-leave na nga natin. Nakulit ko rin eh. Para makatapos tayo. Sige. To get the sales with our target profit, I have to use itong ating formula. Sales in units with target profit. So, sales in unit will be equal to fixed cost daw plus target profit. So, using our formula, we have to get our fixed cost. Ilan yung fixed cost natin? 150,000 plus yung ating target profit. Ilan yung target profit natin daw ulit?
75 po.
75,000 pesos. So, to get that, and next, we have to divide the whole formula into the unit contribution margin, which is 15 pesos. So, ang total sales in unit, target sales in unit, will be 15,000 units. So, 15,000 units daw. Tingnan nga natin kung talaga makukuha natin yung 75,000 pesos na
Ay,
profit.
hindi po pala.
Kung 15,000 ang units na ibebenta natin, sige, kunin natin. So, our total sales using this 15,000 units na produce at na-sold ay 15,000 multiplied by unit selling price, 25, that will be 375 pesos. So, 375 and then yung ating variable cost, 15,000 units multiplied by our unit variable cost na 10 pesos, that will be 150,000 pesos. So, yung ating contribution margin will be ilan? 225,000 pesos. So, from the contribution margin, we have to deduct our total fixed cost na 150,000. So, to get our profit, we have to deduct the fixed cost from our contribution margin. So, contribution margin minus fixed cost is 75,000. Ayan. Tama. So, tama yung ating sagot na to be able to get the 75,000 pesos na profit, dapat tayo makabenta na 15,000 units. Move tayo sa ating next requirement. What peso sales are required to earn an after-tax profit of 60,000 pesos, assuming that the tax rate is 20%. So, kailangan daw natin makakuha ng profit na 60,000 after tax. Paano nga ba natin kinukuha yung profit natin after tax? Diba? We just have to deduct yung tax mula dun sa ating before tax profit. Tama? Tama, diba? At ang ating before tax profit ay ito. Ito yon before tax profit natin. Bago natin bawasan yung profit. And sabi niya, ang sabi daw niya, meron daw tayong 20% na tax rate. So, para makuha lang natin or mas madali tayo mag-solve, using this formula natin, we will use the same formula, fixed cost plus target profit divided by unit contribution margin. Pero ang hinahanap pala dito ay peso sales. So, we just have to use yung fixed cost plus target profit divided by contribution margin ratio. E di, ang gawin natin, ibalik natin sa before tax yung after tax profit natin. Di ba? Kasi ito yung formula natin, di ba? Before tax daw dapat yung target profit. So, kailangan lang natin siyang i-gawin na before tax, itong 60,000. So, to be able to get profit before tax, paano gagawin natin? Alam niyo ba kung paano gagawin natin?
Divide po.
Divide, yes. So, kung ang ating after-tax profit, so nabawasan to ng 20%, ito daw yung profit natin after-tax na may 20% na tax. So, itong 60,000 natin would be 80% na lang siya. Tama? 80% na lamang siya kasi ang 100% natin ay yung ating before tax na profit. So, same lang siya, profit before tax natin, 75,000. So, para makuha natin, ito lang din yan actually. Ang peso sales natin dapat daw with the target profit na 60,000 after tax is 375,000 pesos. Okay, try nga natin. So, kung 100% daw ito, yung profit natin, then yung tax natin, tax is 20%. Ayaw niyang mag-formula, ay, ginagawa niyang formula. O, ayan na, wala nang minus. So, ang tax natin, 20%, 75,000 times 0.20. This will be our tax. So, ang ating after-tax profit would be 75 minus 15,000 na tax, 60,000. Oh, ayan, nag-hold through yung solution or pagsosolve natin sa problem. So, tama yon. Tama na ang ating peso sales required to earn an after-tax profit of 60,000 is 375,000 pesos. May nag-ma'am kanina. Meron bang tanong? O guni-guni ko rin nag-ma'am.
Ma'am, paano na po, ano na nga po yung sagot sa number 3 po?
Number 3 natin, margin of safety at its present sales na 300,000. Balikan natin. Night ko lang naman eh. Ay no, margin of safety natin is 50,000 na sales or 2,000 units. 50,000 sales. Kasi di ba 300,000 yung present sales natin, 300,000. And then yung break-even points na sales natin. Ito yung break-even point natin eh. Break-even point. Break-even point, 250,000. So, margin of safety or present sales minus yung break-even point na sales, that will be to 50,000. And then, 12,000 units na present sales in units, less yung break-even point natin in units na 10,000, that will be 2,000 in units. Guys, nakakasunod pa?
Opo.
Nakakasunod pa. Okay, sige. Thank you.
Opo.
And then now, next naman, what peso sales are required to reach a return on sales or profit margin ratio na 20%? So, ito naman yung gagamitin natin. May target profit ratio na daw tayo, profit margin ratio na 20%. Hide ulit natin to. So, dapat daw, ito daw, sales ratio natin, ay profit natin na yan would be yung ating 20%. So, gamit yung contribution margin statement natin, income statement, based sa ratio, ito, 20% daw ito, dapat. Then, let us now use the formula. Itong formula. Target sales ratio na lang. Ratio. Natin equals. Fixed cost. So, using the formula, yung fixed cost natin, ilan yung fixed cost natin? 150,000. 150,000 plus target profit. Ay, hindi pala ako nag-equals. Target profit natin. Ilan yung target profit daw natin? 20% or 0.20 plus 0.20 ng ano? Diba? We all know na yung profit margin ratio or yung profit ratio natin is 20% ng ating total sales. Tama? Tama, di ba? So, total sales yan, 0.20. Then, we have to divide that. Saan natin i-divide? Nandito pala yung fixed cost. Mali pala ako. The formula. Asa may tinitignan ko? Bakit fixed cost plus? Ito pala yung tinitignan ko. Sorry. Ayan, hindi nyo ko binapansin. Mali pala yung tinitignan ko. Ito nga pala yung formula natin. Sorry So, ulitin natin. So, to get yung required sales natin, peso sales, with the profit margin ratio na 20%, kailangan daw, kailangan natin i-solve using our fixed cost. Yung fixed cost natin, 150,000, divided by our contribution margin ratio. Ang contribution margin ratio natin, ilan? Ilan yung contribution margin ratio? 60%, 0.60. minus yung ating profit ratio, target profit ratio na 20%. So, 375. Parang mali yung formula ko na nailagay dito. Guys, ito rin ba yung nasa module nyo? Pa-double check nga ako.
Yes po, ma'am.
Ito yung nasa module nyo. Sige nga, tignan nga natin kung tama. Wait lang. May nag-chat. Ma'am, yung sagot na po dun sa 5, ano ba yung 5 natin? What peso sales are required to earn an after-tax profit of 60,000 pesos? So, ma'am, yung sagot na po dun sa 5 ay 75,000 po. Hindi po gagamit ng formula ng sales or peso sales. Hindi 75,000. Ang sagot sa number 5 natin ay ito ba yon? Ito yon yung number 5 natin. Kanina.
60
ito.
po.
375. Bali yung before tax o target profit na po yung sagot kaagad. Bali yung before tax or target profit na po yung sagot kaagad. O nga po ma'am, di po ba peso sales po ang ihanap? Di po yung before tax profit na nakuwang 75,000. Ayun. Ayan, sinagot ni Jana. Ang tamang sagot sa number 5 natin, peso sales, it is 375,000 pesos. Parehas lang, sinabi ko lang na parehas sila kasi if what peso sales are required to earn an after-tax profit, di ba para makompute natin yung after-tax profit na yon, kailangan muna natin makuha yung before tax. Kasi yung formula natin, it requires yung before tax. Ayun, tignan nyo, target profit must be expressed before tax. Pre-tax profit equals after-tax profit divided by 100% minus tax rate. So, para makuha natin yung pre-tax profit, yun yung ginawa nga natin kanina. Itong after-tax profit na 60,000, i-divide natin siya sa 80% which is 100% minus yung tax rate natin na 20%. Doon nang galing yon. And binanggit ko lang na parehas sila kasi yung 60,000 na after tax, ang before tax profit nun ay 75,000. So, ang sagot dito sa 5, etong 375,000. Sige, para hindi kayo malito, palitan natin to. Palitan natin. Mag-add tayo ng additional na requirement. So, additional requirement tayo. What peso sales are required to earn an after-tax profit of, sabihin na lang natin na magkano? Kayo nga masabi kung magkano gusto nyo? Magsabi nga kayo.
50,000 mo.
50,000. Ayan. Sige. 50,000. Ipagpalagay natin na hindi natin to kinompute kanina, hindi natin kinompute yung 60,000 na to. Alisin na natin siya. 50,000 daw. So, ilan daw peso sales yung kailangan natin para maka-earn tayo na 50,000 after-tax profit. So, to be able to compute yung peso sales, kailangan muna natin gawin na before tax itong 50,000. Kasi yung formula natin, it requires na dapat before tax yung target profit natin. So, kung ang target profit natin na after tax is 20% yung tax natin, para makuha yung before tax, we have to use after-tax profit 50,000 divided by yung 100% or 1 minus 0.20. So, that would be 62,500. So, yung before tax natin, dapat daw 62,500 yung ating profit. Ito. 62,500 daw ito. Ba't pa naka-ratio? Napakagilas naman ng ano na to. Paano ba to? Ayun. Sorry. Ay, nako. Ayan. Kaya kayo nalilito kasi mali-mali ako sa Excel Ayan. So, yung before tax profit niya daw is 62,500. Then nga ulit natin, di ba? Pag before tax profit, yan yung 100% ng profit nyo. Less natin yung 20%. 20%, yung tax natin, so 62,500 times 20%, that would be 12,500. And then, yung after tax profit natin would be 62,500 minus 12,500, 50,000. Oh, yan, nag-hold true tayo ha. Tama yung computation natin ng pre-tax profit na 62,500. Ngayon, ko-compute natin yung peso sales required to reach the to earn after tax profit or before tax profit na 62,500. Using this formula, fixed cost, so target sales with profit. Fixed cost, ang fixed cost natin, ito yung formula natin ito yung gagamitin natin, itong bullet na to. Fixed cost na 150,000 plus yung target profit natin na before tax, 62,500, and then i-divide natin siya sa total contribution margin ratio na 15%, na 60% pala, 60%, divide natin siya sa 60%. So, ito daw yung dapat target sales natin in peso. 354,166. Ang pangit pala nung naging ano natin. Ayan mo na. 354,166. Kung 354,166 yung total sales natin, ilang units daw yan? Sige, compute nga natin. 354,166.67 divided by 25 selling price. That would be 14,166 na units. Guys, nasusundan pa yung ginagawa ko?
Opo.
Nasusundan. Ayan. So, at tingnan natin kung tatama ba talaga tayo, kung talagang ito yung tamang sagot. So, gawin natin yung contribution margin income statement. If we have a sales at 354,166.67, we compute now yung variable cost natin, 14,166 units multiplied by our variable cost per unit na 10 pesos. And then, yung contribution margin natin would be sales minus yung ating variable cost. That will be 212,500. And then, we'll deduct our fixed cost na 150. Tama ba yung magiging sagot natin na profit would be 212,500 minus 150,000. Ayun, tama, nakuha natin. 62,500 yung before tax profit and 50,000 pesos na after tax profit. Nagets na kung paano i-compute yung after tax profit? After tax target profit? Nagets na? Ang nangyari lang kasi dito kanina, dun sa number 5, dahil nga magiging parehas lang siya ng sagot dito sa number 4, kaya sinabi ko na lang, parehas lang. Pero hindi 75,000 yung tamang sagot. Ang sagot natin doon ay 375,000 kasi peso sales yung hinahanap at hindi yung before tax profit. So kung ang hahanapin dyan ay what is the before tax profit, ganon, yun ang sagot nyo, 75,000. Naintindihan na? Nasundan na?
Opo.
Ayan. Okay, thank you. So, wait, i-delete na natin to. I-delete ko to. Hide na lang natin. Ito ay i-delete ko na. Yan relevant. Asan na tayo? Number 6 ba? Number 6? Tama ba number 6 tayo? Yan. So, sa number 6, what peso sales are required to reach a return on sales or profit margin ratio of 20%? So, now we will use itong formula na to, sales or peso sales with target profit ratio. So, using our formula, fixed cost divided by our contribution margin ratio minus profit ratio. So, profit ratio. Guys, extend tayong konti Dapat hanggang 1:30 lang tayo. Wala naman kayong klase, di ba? And 2 p.m. pa naman. Ay, kailangan ko pala mag-send ng link sa mga second year na 2 p.m. sila. Wait lang, okay lang kahit 5-minute break tayo para makapaggawa ako ng Zoom link. 5 minutes. Wait lang Thank you. Zoom recording. Okay. To continue. And to continue our requirements sa problem, number 6, we have to get yung peso sales required to reach a return on sales or profit margin ratio of 20%. So based sa ating formula, fixed cost divided by contribution margin ratio minus yung profit ratio natin. So ito na, fixed cost 150,000 divided by 0.6 yung ating contribution margin ratio minus yung target profit margin ratio daw natin na 20%. So 20%, ayan. That will be 375,000 pesos. And may nakuha na tayo kanina, may na-solve tayo kanina, 375,000 pesos din yung sales. Masusundan ba to kapag ito na lang din yung ginamit ko? Actually, the same lang din siya dito kanina. Parehas siya. Ito na lang gamitin natin So we now have, kung ang target sales ratio daw, 375,000. Tingnan nga natin kung tama ba na 20% yung profit margin ratio. So yung 375,000 natin, this will be our 100%. Now we have to compute yung variable cost ratio. Paano na ulit? Variable cost divided by total sales. Tama? Tama. And then to get our contribution margin ratio, we have to get yung contribution margin divided by our total sales. That will be 60%. And then yung ating fixed cost, it will be total fixed cost divided by total sales. Ay, mali pala ako. Total sales na 375, that would be 40%. 40%. And then, lastly, we have our profit na 75 divided by our total sales. So, ayun, tama. Nakuha natin. 20% yung profit margin ratio. Okay, nasundan to? Nasundan to? Okay, thank you. Second to the last. So, we have our, sige nga, pabasa nga ako mahaba. Jacqueline Patorgo, pabasa nga ako.
Assuming ABC is currently selling 8,000 units per month, ABC believes that sales would increase if advertising were increased by 75,000. How many units should sales increase to maintain the same loss that it is currently incurring?
Okay, thank you. So, sabi niya daw, meron daw siyang currently binebenta na 8,000 units per month. So, sabi niya 8,000 units per month. Ano ba yung naka-unmute? Dan Paul. So, 8,000 units per month daw. So, sabi ni ABC believes that sales would increase if advertising were increased by 75,000 pesos. How many units should sales increase to maintain the same loss that it is currently incurring? So, tingnan muna natin kung magkano ba yung total sales at kung magkano yung total na kinikita nung ni ABC Company kung 8,000 yung binabenta niya. So, to get our sales, total sales, 8,000 units multiplied by our selling price na 25 pesos, and then we get our variable cost. Variable cost, 8,000 units multiplied by 10 pesos, variable cost per unit. So, to get our contribution margin, 200,000 minus 80,000, 120,000 yung contribution margin per unit natin. And yung fixed cost natin would be 150,000. So, 150,000 yan. Kaya, ang total loss ni ABC Company ngayon is ilan? 30,000 pesos. So 30,000 yung loss niya. Ilan daw units ng sales yung kailangan nilang maibenta para same daw, ma-maintain yung same loss that it is currently incurring. So, dapat daw 30,000 din yung loss ni ABC Company. So, kung 30,000 yung loss niya, and then yung fixed cost niya ay nadagdagan ng 75,000, so 150,000 plus 75,000. So, ngayon ang fixed cost niya, 225,000. How much will be, tingnan natin kung ilan. So, 225, work backwards na lang tayo. Di ba alam nyo naman to isolve pababa? So, i-work backwards natin para makuha natin yung total sales. And then from the total sales, i-divide lang natin siya sa selling price para makuha yung total sales. So, 225 plus 30,000, tama ba? Tama?
Yes po.
Okay. So, 225,000 plus 30,000, that would be 255,000. So, kung 255,000, yung ating contribution margin, yung, and we have, so mula doon sa contribution margin natin, alam natin na sales ay 100%, di ba? Guys, kung wala kayong makikitang bagong given, gamitin nyo ito. Not necessarily ito, pero gamitin nyo yung mga napag-usapan natin kanina. Kasi paano mo makuha yung variable cost? Paano mo makuha yung variable cost kung wala na tayong paggagamitan, hindi natin alam, di ba? Kaya mo bang i-compute to? Makuha mo ba to kung 255 to? Makuha ba natin? Di ba hindi natin kayang kuhanin? So, based dun sa ating ratio na ginagamit pa natin kanina, we all know na si selling price or si total sales ay 100%. So kung 100% si total sales natin, para ma-compute yung contribution margin natin, para natin makuha to, 255, makuha ba natin? Divide sa 100% na total sales, ay sa total sales, wala rin, di ba? Kaya ba natin makuha?
Ma'am,
Ano yun? Parang
Ma'am,
mali
yung sa-
tayo.
ma'am, yung sa 255 po, ma'am, hindi po ba, ano po, 195 po? Kasi po loss
Yun
po
nga rin.
eh.
Sabi ko nga rin, mali tayo eh. Thank you. Sino yung nagsasalita kanina? Ay, si Jana. Si Jana, attentive pa siya. Yung iba, na-distract na. Yan, kasi. Kakat ko na nga lang yun. Nakakainis. Mag-edit pa tuloy ako ngayon ng recorded video.
Ma'am, ayun nga po yung highlights eh.
Tama na. So, mali ito kasi di ba nga may loss daw tayo. So, kung may loss tayo, dapat ito mas mababa kumpara sa ating contribution margin. Tama? So, para makuha natin, this will be 225,000 ay minus na 30,000. Ayan. So, 195. Tama si Jana kanina na 195. Kaso, paano natin makukuha? Paano natin makukuha?
Divide
Di ba?
15.
Ha? Paano natin ito makukuha? Ito lang yung formula natin. Wala na ibang formula dyan. Wala na kayo ibang makikitang formula para makuha yan. Kaya ito na yung gagamitin natin. So, using this ratio, we all know na 100% si ating sales, di ba? 100% si sales natin. And si contribution margin daw natin is ilang percent? 60%. So, 60% daw tong contribution margin natin na to. At alam natin kung 60% ito, para makuha to, ito ay 60% no 100 na yon. So kung 100% yan, dapat lang natin i-divide yung contribution margin to 60%. Tama ba? Tama ba? Tama? Hoy, wag kayo. Nagets ba? Kung saan nanggaling yon? O ulitin ko?
Apo,
Ulitin. Sige, ulitin natin. Sige, from the start tayo. Sabi niya daw kasi, assuming ABC is currently selling 8,000 units per month. So, 8,000 units daw binebenta niya sa kasalukuyan. Tapos, sabi ni ABC believes that sales would increase if advertising were increased by 75,000. So, dadagdagan daw natin yung advertising cost ng 75,000 pesos. Ano mga ba yung advertising cost natin? Ito ba ay variable cost or fixed cost? Ano yung advertising? Ano
Fixed
yun?
cost.
Variable. Ang ating advertising cost ay fixed cost, hindi ito
cost.
variable cost. Fixed yan. Isa rin siyang periodic cost. So, if we know na yung advertising cost ay fixed cost, dadagdagan lang natin ngayon yung ating fixed cost. So, 150,000, yung currently natin, 150,000 na fixed cost plus yung advertising cost nga doon na idadagdag natin ngayong period na to. So, 225,000 na ngayon yung fixed cost natin. Sabi niya, ilang sales daw ba yung kailangan nating maibenta, ilang units daw ba yung kailangan nating maibenta para yung loss natin nito ng 8,000 units na natin pinoproduce currently, sa ngayon ito daw kasi ginaano natin ngayon sa ngayon. 8,000 lang yung pinoproduce at binebenta natin, kaya meron tayong loss. So, ilan daw dapat na units yung idadagdag natin para lang ma-cover up na same din yung loss natin, pero mako-cover up pa itong 75,000 na fixed cost. So, to compute, gagamitin lang natin itong contribution margin income statement. So, meron na nga tayo fixed cost na 225,000. And sabi nga dapat ang loss 30,000 pa rin. Kaparehas nito, dapat parehas nga daw silang loss 30,000. So, work backwards na lang tayo kung saan we all know na si contribution margin less fixed cost, that would be our profit. Dito, loss ito, kaya dapat mas mababa si contribution margin kumpara kay fixed cost. So, 225,000 less 30,000, this will be 195,000. Nasundan pa ako hanggang dito? Nasundan pa hanggang dito. Okay. Okay, thank you. So, kung nasundan pa ako hanggang dito, now, paano natin makukuha si total sales at si variable cost? Wala na tayong other data given dito. Wala na tayong wala na ibinigay sa atin. Wala nang iba pang binigay sa atin. Diba?
I-divide po sa 60%.
Yan. So, bakit natin kailangan i-divide sa 60%? Diba, ang assumptions natin kanina, sabi dito sa assumptions, fixed cost, unit variable cost, selling price on sales mix must behave as constant. So, nagbe-behave daw si selling price natin, si variable cost at si fixed cost, pati na rin si contribution margin na constant. Ibig sabihin, hindi sila nagbabago daw. So, kung hindi sila nagbabago, we all know na etong ratio din natin na to ay hindi magbabago. Siya din ay constant. Diba? Constant din siya. Kasi,
paano po
yes?
50? Yung 50% po.
Ang constant natin ay yung total fixed cost. So, sa total fixed cost, hindi na siya hold true siya dun sa total na constant. Pero dito, sa ratio natin, hindi siya magiging constant kasi ito lang, yung total lang. Di ba nga, kapag ginawa na natin siyang unit, nagiging variable na yung fixed cost. Di ba? Na-discuss ko. Ito lang yung per unit ay constant. So, ito lang yung magre-remain constant. Kasi, kahit i-divide mo yan, 15 divide 25 mo, 60% pa rin. 10 divide 25, that would be 40% pa rin. So, sila lang yung mag-hold na constant. Then, kay fixed cost, yung total fixed cost lang yung hold na constant. So, now that we know na constant daw yung ating contribution margin, so, alam natin na 60% din itong contribution margin. That will be constant na 60% ng ating total selling price na 100%. So kung ito ay 60%, para makuha natin 100%, kailangan lang natin i-divide yung 195,000 divided by 60%. So, yung ating 100% is 325,000 at yun yung ating total sales. So, sa sales natin, dapat daw makabenta tayo ng 325,000 and yung 325,000 na yon ay ilang units. So, ilang units yan? 325,000 divided by our selling price at 25. So, 13,000 units daw yung kailangan nating maibenta para magkaroon tayo ng same na loss noong 8,000 units ang binibenta natin. Tingnan natin. So, kung 13,000 units yan, times yung variable cost natin na 10 pesos, tama ba yung contribution margin natin? 325,000 minus
Opo.
130,000. Tama ba? 195,000 din siya, pa rin siya. Tama?
Opo.
Okay. So, ayan. Yun na yung magiging ano natin. Magiging sagot natin. Ang sabi niya, how many units should sales increase? Ayan na. So, kung ang nire-require ng question natin is how many units should sale increase to maintain the same loss that it is currently incurring, ano ang tamang sagot sa number 7? Ano ang tamang sagot sa...
5,000 units po.
Ilan?
5,000 po.
5,000. Yes,
5,000.
correct. That is correct because we are looking yung unit sales na nag-increase, not the total unit sales na kailangan natin ma-achieve to get the same loss. So, you increase 13,000 minus 8,000, that would be 5,000 units ang tamang sagot sa number 7. Yan. So, now let's move sa ating last question. Last question na tayo sa wakas. Ayan. Sa wakas, ito algebra to. Sige nga, pabasa nga ako. Cristel Simpliciano. Number 8 lang.
Assuming ABC currently pays its salespeople a monthly salary of 10,000 without any commission, ABC considers a plan whereby salespeople receive a 10% commission, but their monthly salary would fall to 7,000. What sales level will ABC be indifferent to compensation plans?
Okay, so punta na tayo ngayon kay indifference point. So indifference point daw, ilan daw yung level ng volume or 11, yan, what sales level, level ng sales na magiging indifferent yung dalawang compensation plans or yung dalawang alternative. So compare natin ngayon si alternative A, and then si alternative B. Si alternative A daw, eto, yung currently daw, ABC currently pays its salespeople na monthly salary na 10,000. So, monthly salary yon. So, kung monthly salary, that would be, ano yung monthly salary na yon? Variable cost or fixed cost? Yung monthly salary.
Fixed po.
Fixed cost, yes. So, 10,000 lang daw na fixed cost without any commission yung ibibigay niya. Then, ngayon, kino-consider niya daw yung second alternative to which yung plan niya daw would be makaka-receive ng 10% commission. Saan madalas natin kino-compute yung commission? Saan kino-compute ang commission? Kapag may commission, yung percentage ng commission. Kapag kayo, pinagbenta, tapos bibigyan kayong commission, saan kino-compute yun?
Saan?
Sales po.
Sa sales. Yes, that is correct. So, ang ibibigay na daw ngayon ni ABC is 10% commission which is 10% ng sales na maibebenta nila. So, And then, aside from their commission, magkakaroon pa rin daw sila yung monthly salary, pero ngayon, bababaan na ng 7,000. Hindi na siya magiging 10,000. Ito yung alternative A natin, 10,000. Now, we have to compute or make an equation para ma-compute natin to. O, dito, papasok ulit yung algebra nyo, ha. Guys, equals to. Inilayo ko lang yung equals kasi nga nasa Excel ako. Alam niyo naman kapag naglagay ako equals, magluloko yan. So, dito dapat yan, equals. O, ganon. Kaso kasi pag naglagay akong fixed cost, ganon yan eh. O, mag-e-error. So, yun yan. Magkadugtong lang siya. Gawa tayo ngayon ng equation using our algebra. O, kailangan yung, i-recall yung algebra nyo. So, to get this, meron pa daw silang fixed cost or fixed salary monthly na 7,000. And aside from the 7,000, madadagdagan pa daw to ng 10%. So, 10% daw, 10% ng sales. Nagmumula to sa sales. Sa sales natin, 10% ng sales. So, ayan. And then, expound or expand? Ano yung tamang term? Expound, di ba? So, 7,000 plus 10%. Paano natin makompute yung sales? 10% ng selling price times unit. Tama? Dalawa dapat yun. Tama? Tama ba? Uy.
Opo.
Yes. Sige, expound ulit natin. So, 7,000 daw plus 10% ngayon, 10%. Ay, magsisimula na sila. Wait lang po. Naka-chat ko nga lang si Ma'am Mariette. Ayoko na, naka-share screen pala ako. Wala yung cellphone ko eh. Ay,
Si Ma'am Mariette lang po ba?
ha?
Si Ma'am Mariette lang po.
Oo, si Ma'am Mariette lang. Ayan, wait lang. Sige, tapusin na natin. So, 10% and we have our constant selling price na, di ba? So, may constant na tayo na selling price na 25 pesos. Di pala pwede yun. Naka-Excel tayo. So, yung selling price natin, 25 pesos multiplied by our unit. And sa ating algebra, di ba yung cost driver natin, pwede na natin siyang gawin na lang variable. So, 7,000 plus 10% ng 25x. Ayan. Nag-gets na ako saan nanggaling ating formula?
Opo.
Nag-gets na ako saan nanggaling. Ngayon, we have to tandaan nyo yun doon sa regression analysis nyo kung saan may dalawang may dalawa kayong tawag dito, may dalawa kayong
Axis po.
hindi. Ano ba tong algebraic equation na to? Hindi ko na matandaan. So, sabi niya, di ba dun sa algebra nyo, kapag may dalawang alternative, tapos hanapin nga daw natin indifference point. So, sa indifference point, dapat daw equal ito dito. So, equal daw ito dito. Kailangan natin makuha kung ilan yung value ng x. Kailangan natin makuha kung ilan yung value ng x eh. So, to get that, tandaan nyo ba ito? Ay, ano ba naman to? Equals, enter. Equals, enter. So, para makuha natin yung value ng x, we have to use this, itong dalawa equation. So, kung meron tayong 10,000, equal siya sa 7,000 plus 10% ng times 25x. So, transpose ulit natin. Tama? Kasi kailangan natin ma-isolate si variable. Di ba sa algebra nyo, ganon? Kailangan natin ma-isolate yung variable na x.
Ma-cancel out po.
Yes, kailangan ma-cancel out. 10,000 minus 7,000 kasi itatranspose natin yung 7,000 equals yan to
10%.
Equals yan to
Yes.
10%
Times
ng
25.
25,
units.
25x. Then, paano pang gagawin natin? So, nakuha na natin to. 10 minus 7, 3,000. 3,000. Copy lang natin to.
Divide 25.
Ayan, ngayon. Tapos, paano susunod natin? Paano susunod? Kailangan nating, paano susunod dito?
I-cancel po si X.
I-cancel si X. Paano natin maka-cancel si X? Si X pa agad i-cancel natin.
Divide
Diba?
po si
Kailangan muna natin itong
ano?
ma-multiply na dalawa.
Ayo.
Hindi pa natin maka-cancel si X eh. May
Ay,
dalawa pang
2
equation dito.
po.
Diba? So, 3,000. Guys, hindi ako masyadong magaling sa algebra, kaya tulungan niyo ako. Kaya nga, di ba, sinabi ko sa inyo yung pinakauna, tutulungan niyo ako. So, this will be 2.5x. 2.5x na.
Opo.
Tama? Kasi 10% times 25x. So, 2.5x. Tama? Guys, nakakasunod pa ba kayo?
Opo.
Nakakasunod? Nakakasunod pa lahat?
Yes po.
Okay, ayan. Sige. Thank you. Opo. Ayan. So, 2.5x. Now, ang gagawin na natin, di ba? Para ma-isolate na natin mismo si x, i-divide na natin siya kung magkano yung kasama ni x or kung magkano kasama ni variable. So, i-divide natin to sa 2.5. So, 2.5x divided by 2.5, that would be x na lang. Ngayon, kailangan pa rin natin i-divide din ito ng 2.5. Kung ilan yung dinivide natin sa kabila, ay sa isang side, yun din yung i-divide natin sa kabilang side. Tama? 3,000 divided by 2.5. Alam ko, naintindihan nyo na yan. Ano to, algebra to? Nagkakaintindihan tayo dito. Ayan. Alam ko lang mag-solve, pero hindi ko maano kung paano nangyari yon. Alam nyo rin naman yun eh, di ba yung mga Descartes, ano yung Descartes plane ba yun? Diba? Kaya nyo ba i-explain yun, yung trigonometry, mga ganun-ganon? Ay, naku, iniwanan na natin yan sa high school, tas ngayon binabalik pa sa atin, ano, nakakainis. Pero yun, anyway, ayan, going back, sige, ang dami ko na naman chika, last na to. So, nakuha na natin ngayon si X. So, kung nakuha na natin si X, pwede na natin ngayon i-compute yung second alternative. Yung second alternative, ito the equation natin. To be able to get yung second alternative natin, 7,000 plus 10% daw ng 25 times X. 10% ng 25 times
1,000.
1,2. Ay. Ayaw ng formula ko. Ganyan. Ganyan ba sa Excel? Times, ay, ba't ayaw? Times 1, 2 ko na lang. 1, 2. Nagets nyo kung paano ginawa ko? Sinubstitute ko lang yung variable natin dito sa equation. Mula dito. Kaya nyo na yung gawin sa calculator nyo, di ba?
Yes, ma'am. Equal, ma'am. 10,000.
Okay. Ilan yung tamang sagot? Bakit ayaw? Hindi X yung ginagamit. Ito nga palang asterisk. Ay, ayaw pa rin.
X.
Ay, ilan yung tamang sagot? Alam ko nakuha nyo na.
10,000.
10,000. So, ang alternative B natin, 10,000. 10,000 pa rin. Oh. Kasi nga 10,000 nga, di ba? 10,000 equals 10,000.
Ma'am, yung 1, 2 po. Yung X.
Ha?
Yung 1, 2 po ata yung alternative.
1, 2 yung alternative.
Na kailangan po na ano. Bali po, checking lang po ng ano.
Yun nga. Hindi, pinapacheck ko lang sa inyo na mag-i-equal sila. Oh. So, equal sila, di ba? Si alternative A natin, 10,000. And then, meron tayong alternative B. Ito yung gagawin niya. 10,000. Dapat nga kasi, di ba? Indifference point tayo. Indifferent. So, yun yung point kung saan yung units or yung total sales ay magiging parehas. And in our case, indifferent yung magiging sales level na yon na indifference na ito yung cost. So try nga natin. Ngayon, we have solved na yung X natin. So si X daw, ano yung X natin? X natin, ito yung cost driver, di ba? Doon sa ating equations. Si X will be our cost driver and sa lahat ng sinosolve natin, ating cost driver would be our units. So kung 1,200 yung unit natin, under sa alternative A, and then we have our alternative B. Pareho silang 1,200 units ha. Ayan. Ilan ngayon yung ating selling price? So sa selling price natin, two times etong sales, ay mali, selling price, $30,000, and then our variable cost will be 2 times 10 pesos. And then ating contribution margin would be, ilan? Contribution margin would be 30 minus 12, 18,000. Yan, 18,000. Ang ating fixed cost is 150,000. 150,000. Ilan na magiging ano nito? Ilan na magiging profit? We have a loss of 132,000. Ngayon, dito sa kabila natin, total sales times selling price. And then, we have our variable cost. Ay, parehas lang pala to guys. So, variable cost natin, 2 times 10%, 10. So, same lang to. Pero ngayon, ilan na yung ating, ilan yung ating magiging fixed cost? It will be, sa ating fixed cost will be, ay, wait lang. Guys, balikan ko nga kayo dito. Okay lang?
Apo.
Okay lang? 2:06 na. May mali ako dito. Pero tama ito, nag-hold true ito. May mali ako na ina-explain sa inyo. Balikan ko kayo dito, okay lang? Mag-stop share na ako, baka ano na naman makita nyo sa chat ko. Wait. Ayan, hinahanap na ako. Wait po. Sige guys. Nag-stop ano na ba ako?